Chapter 8. I'm not necessarily against what you are suggesting, Jay said slowly, feeling his excitement building. My grandfather has been pushing me to get my own life for a while now, but I haven't been willing to leave him by himself. If you are willing to watch him for me, then I might be willing to do something of this nature. There is nothing wrong with me, boy. Jethro interrupted his grandson. I'm perfectly healthy. You just worry too much. Of course I worry, you're the only family that I have left. Jay retorted hotly. And now I'm telling you the same thing that I've been telling you for the last 2 years. Get a life. Go to a foreign country with a pretty girl, go on a date, do something reckless. Jethro slammed his hand down and cursed. Live a little for once. Jay had no response to that. His grandfather never cursed, and most certainly not in front of company. That single outburst had told him more about the way his grandfather truly felt than anything else that he had tried so far. The others in the room were silent as they watched the back and forth between grandfather and grandson. The space was heavy with emotion from everything that had been said and implied. Someone needed to break the staring contest the two were having as well before anything happened. Lexie decided that it was up to her to do something about it. Do you really think that I'm pretty? She asked, full of fake innocence, flashing her eyelashes at them with a smile. Both men exhaled and looked at her. You know you are, dear, don't bother fishing for compliments on that one, Jethro stated, while Jay merely grunted in agreement. Lexie was glad at their response. No one liked to think that they were ugly, but in truth, Jay was not the only one who needed to get a life and live a little. Or maybe even a lot, depending. The both of them had been consistently putting their own lives on hold for the sake of their families. It was past time that they pulled themselves out of their respective ruts and started moving forward again. Jay leaned back into the couch and scrubbed a hand over his face, massaging his closed eyes. I understand what you are saying, and to be perfectly honest, I even agree with it. I always have, you know that. There are a lot of things that I want to do with my life, a lot that I want to learn and experience. None of that, though, is more important than family and being there for you when you need me. Boy, you need to wake up, Jethro stated emphatically. I'm not that old yet. I know your parents' death did a number on you, and that you are afraid to lose me. You need to understand, though, that accidents happen, and no matter what might happen, you being here won't make a lick of difference. Jay started to protest at his grandfather's words. Seeing his grandson's reaction, Jethro held up a hand to forestall any comments and continued. As I was saying, if it's an accident, you can't stop it. If it's a health issue, then there will probably be time for you to come back from wherever and still see me. I've been trying to explain that to you for some time now, and you have been refusing to listen. So now I am going to tell you in front of everyone here. You are going to leave home and live your own life. It isn't healthy to put it off for as long as you have, and I'm not going to let you do it any longer. Jethro paused in the middle of his rant as he stopped to think. In fact, I have just decided that you are going to France as soon as possible. Whether you are going alone or with Lexie is between the two of you and her family, but make no mistake, you are going. I'm tired of having this discussion with you, so I'm putting my foot down for the final time. This is happening. This is important to us all here, that someone go over there and find out more about what happened. I'll go. I have no problem with going over there with him, Lexie interjected eagerly. I agree that we need to find out more about what they were doing over there. I don't know what we'll find or even have access to, but we can at least start in the town they were staying in and go from there. She spoke firmly while looking each person in the eye, daring them to object. Alex opened his mouth to say something, only to have her eyes harden and focus on him. His mouth snapped shut for a second before opening once more. Now don't go looking at me like that, young lady. I'm not going to object to you going over there with him. I was merely going to say that I agree with you, and that the sooner we can all decide on a date, the sooner we can buy plane tickets and start getting everything organized. Lexie's mouth flopped open in surprise at his declaration, finding herself unable to say anything in response. Tracy merely nodded in agreement at what he had said, before adding her own thoughts to the mix. I agree with Dad, sweetie. Honestly, we couldn't find a better traveling companion if we tried. The two of you have a connection. She gave both of them a hard look. Whether that is of brother and sister or merely childhood friends remains to be seen, but it is there regardless. Besides that, you trust him, and while neither of us knows him, we know you and we trust your judgment. If you trust him, we trust him. Of course, that doesn't mean that we aren't going to threaten him into oblivion if he doesn't return you unharmed. She finished sweetly. Jay had the decency to look properly chastened at the thought, even though he knew that they were mostly joking. The old man had managed to track him around the country, however, so there was definitely going to be a lot of truth in any threats they made as well. Great, threaten him all you like. I'll even help you. We still need to decide on when they are leaving, though. Lexie has a passport already, right? Jethro asked, preventing them from continuing that train of remarks. She does. She has never used it, mind you, but she does have one. I've made sure it never expired on her. Alex put in helpfully. We will need a few days to go shopping and for the test to arrive. They should be able to leave on Wednesday or Thursday of next week. Tracy told them as she looked at her computer. I can book them both flights right now, or rather I can reserve them now, and then we can book them properly later when I have their information ready. There is one thing I should add. Alex interrupted them before they could get carried away. The fire that killed your parents. I believe it was set on purpose. His eyes were focused on Lexie as he announced this. Do you think that we will be in some kind of danger when we are over there? Jay asked soberly, suddenly worried at the implications for them. I don't know. I just felt it was one last thing that you needed to know. Alex kept his eyes on Lexie as she looked at him. I'm sorry I forgot to tell you earlier. They were likely murdered, and since they were spies, the likelihood that they were targeted, I think, is high. Whether or not you will be in danger while you are over there, I think, depends on why they were originally targeted, and by who. Yes, you should have told me earlier. You should have told me all of this when I was a kid. Lexie told him with a sigh, holding his gaze. This just means that we will need to be careful over there, and make sure we watch our backs. The room devolved into a sudden planning session as the details were fleshed out. They kept at it until a working list and proposal had taken shape. Jay and Lexie were silent for the most part, each lost in their own separate worlds and turbulent thoughts. After the meeting finally ended, they all separated for the rest of the day. Jay hung back so that he could talk to Lexie in private before leaving with his grandfather. Are you sure that you are all right with this? I know we still don't know each other that well as adults, but for whatever it's worth, I think I'm still the same person I was back then. He grinned. Just, more grown up. What for sure hasn't changed is my desire to not let anything happen to you. I know you won't, and I do want this. Now that I actually know something about my parents, I can't wait to go over there and try to find out more about them. Lexie paused for a second before continuing in a quieter tone. That being said, I would feel a lot better about it if we could talk more and get to know one another better before we actually leave. Thank heavens you said that, Jay agreed, not so secretly relieved. I was thinking the exact same thing, but I didn't really know how to say it. Last night I think was a good beginning to that, but there is a lot more that we need to talk about. It'll take some time for us to get to know one another again. To do that, we actually have to spend time together, talking and just interacting. He hesitated, a vulnerable expression coming to his face. I don't want to hurt you, Lexie, and if there is any chance that I might, even by accident during this trip, then we need to know beforehand. People get hurt, Jay. It's not something that can be avoided. It's about the intent behind the actions that are important, and I don't believe that you would willingly cause me harm. Lexie replied thoughtfully while chewing softly on her bottom lip. Jay regarded her silently for a moment before responding. No, I wouldn't. Even if you have changed, I still want to get to know you. That has never changed. And no matter what, you are still my childhood friend, and that alone means more to me than you could possibly imagine. Lexie watched him as he finished. His eyes seemed to empty and grow haunted for a reason she couldn't understand, not yet at least. Then she blinked, and it was gone, hidden behind a mask or perhaps just disguised with happier memories. Silence reigned once more as it descended in an awkward wave that all but threatened to swallow them whole. Jay shuffled in place, unsure of what to do next, before turning and opening the door. I'll see you tomorrow, and now that you have my cell number, you can call me later if you want to talk. He mentioned putting the option out there. Lexie nodded mutely and lifted her hand to wave goodbye as he left. Jay wasn't sure if he expected her to call him, or even if it would be for the best if she did not. He was so confused about the entire situation. His emotions were all over the place, and they were not something that he could even hope to control this late in the game. Those very same feelings and emotions that were causing him problems now had been building and growing since they were kids. Worse, he had even been aware of them and had actively encouraged them to grow as he got older. Those emotions and feelings had been sidelined multiple times already. The last time she disappeared from his life had been the worst. They couldn't be pushed away this time, not again. Now, suddenly, he was faced with information that was throwing everything he thought he knew into disarray. Jay was finding himself ill-equipped to handle the toll it was already taking on his life. All he could hope for at this point was for the test results to hurry back to them. Hopefully, they would put him out of his misery, one way or another. Unfortunately, until those results came back, he was stuck in a very unpleasant form of limbo that refused to let him out. Lexie never called that night. Jay had stayed awake long into the twilight hours, alternately hoping that she would, and that she would not call him. Neither option really mattered to him, as he couldn't get to sleep either way at that point. He was too worked up over everything that was going on, that turning his mind off long enough to fall asleep was an impossibility. Sleep finally overwhelmed him sometime in the darkest hours of the night. A rapid pounding on his door woke him after what felt like mere minutes' worth of sleep. That was not the case, of course, as the sky outside was now bright and shining through the window onto his face. That knowledge did not make it any easier to drag himself out of bed. Calm down, Grandpa. I'm up. I'm up. Give me a minute to get changed and then I'll be down. Jay finally managed to croak out as the pounding on his door continued. The knocking stopped and blessed silence reigned. You're 20 years old and you still make your grandfather wake you up. Lexie's laughing voice echoed through the door and into his room. Jay sat up quickly with a cringe and a sway as his entire room swam in his vision before settling. Give me a break. It's been an eventful past couple of days. Can you really blame me if I have trouble getting to sleep at a decent time and then waking up at a decent hour as well? Jay asked back. Lexie's laugh was the only reply. Jay grabbed a shirt and pants before heading into the attached bathroom to give his face a quick scrub and wash. Feeling a little more awake and dressed in his pants and shirt, Jay opened the door and snagged his shoes and some socks before sitting back on his bed to put them on. Lexie had been waiting for him to exit the room, but stood at the now open door, and at the implied invitation, followed him into his room. What are you doing here so early anyway? Jay asked distractedly while tying his shoes. I didn't feel comfortable calling you last night, but I still wanted to talk to you regardless. I figured this way would be best for now. Lexie pushed the words out in a breathless rush, sitting beside him on the bed. Jay looked at her to the side in surprise. You're rather straightforward with that explanation. She nodded before replying. Lying or skirting the issue normally causes more problems than if they had just been faced head-on. I think that when something is important, I should do what I can to make sure that there are no misunderstandings for the future. I'm not saying that it's perfect or anything, just that I think it helps in the long run. He blinked and smiled. I don't think that there is anything wrong with that. If anything, I rather like it and agree. Besides, you're right, I was wondering why you never called last night. Even though I really shouldn't have been expecting you to in the first place. Your answer was nice and straightforward. It not only answered the questions I had, but also settled some others for me. There was no way he was going to tell her how much he had really been thinking about her. There was no way, not yet, maybe not ever. Jay stood and politely held out his hand to her. Lexie rolled her eyes at him but took it, regardless. Together they made their way downstairs to the food, waiting for them in the kitchen. They each grabbed a plate and some food before joining Jay's grandfather at the table to eat. Did your Aunt Tracy already order that DNA thing, a magic test that you mentioned yesterday? Lexie nodded in affirmative and continued devouring her omelet. Jethro looked at his watch before eyeing his grandson calmly over the rim of his nearly empty mug of coffee. Don't you have to be leaving in just a few minutes? Your class should be starting soon. Lexie looked at Jay questioningly and continued to eat. I take Taekwondo as well as some other mixed martial arts a few times a week at a gym near here, Jay said quietly in an embarrassed voice. One of the classes starts in just a little bit. Jethro took a sip of his coffee, finishing off the rest of the steaming liquid. Why don't you take her with you? If she's going to France as well, then it would be a good idea for her to start learning self-defense now. Obviously, she's not going to be able to do anything right away, but it'll be a good start, and you can keep teaching her while you are over there. Jay's head shot up at his grandfather's suggestion. It was actually a pretty good one, as they came. It would indeed be a good idea if she could defend herself, and while he was right that it didn't and wouldn't happen overnight, they could at least start the process now and continue it over there. Would that be all right? If you don't mind and have the time, I mean? I know they wouldn't mind having another person in the class with us. Lexie smiled smugly, taking the time to swallow her food before replying. That would be great. I've been meaning to find a gym here to train at, anyway. I've been taking lessons for years myself, along with Tracy, and don't want to get out of practice. So, there is no need for me to start at the beginning or anything. I would like to think that I can at least take care of myself in a fight, if I need to. She finished confidently. Jay grinned happily at the news. That's great. I remember you mentioning when we were younger that you wanted to be able to defend yourself. I'm glad that you went through with it. Do you have everything that you need ready at the house, or will you need some time to find the right box that they're in? It's still in one of the boxes, but I think I know which one, so it won't take too long to gather everything together. Unless I'm wrong, of course. Sounds good. Let's finish eating, then I just need to run upstairs, grab my bag, and then we'll head to your place to find everything. That sound all right to you? Perfect. Lexie exclaimed, just before another forkful of food made its way into her waiting mouth. Both rushed through the rest of the meal, and Jay ran upstairs to grab his bag. After giving his grandfather a quick hug, Jay opened the door for Lexie, and they exited the house. Jay held the passenger side door open for Lexie before moving around to the driver's side of his car. What is the class we are attending today? Lexie asked as he buckled his seatbelt. This class isn't focused on any one style, it is more of a mixed martial arts class. So, there is a little of everything. Ooh, MMA, it's been a while since I did freestyle like that. This should be interesting, at least it'll be faster finding exercise clothes for that. She said, somewhat wryly. A quick bark of laughter escaped Jay's mouth as he navigated the streets to her house.